today. So.
I'd like to call the order of the Milan Area Schools Board of Education special meeting for Monday, August 14th. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for attending this evening. All board members are present. Just a few housekeeping items here to start with. We are going to start with a closed session. So with that, with it being back in the boardroom, during the closed session, we will ask the audience members to go out and wait in the hall. We have chairs set up in the hallway at that time. Because we're going to start with some student reinstatement hearings, which was the main purpose of the special meeting. So when we ask you to do that, that's where that'll happen. And then when we come back into open session, we'll invite anybody who wants to come back in for open session at the conclusion of the closed session. Again, just a reminder for the board members with our new technology. Remember to press the green button to talk, and then press the green button when you are done speaking. We do have a camera this evening, so Dan is helping us out. We're going to see how that works with the recording. So we'll see what that looks like when it's uploaded at the end of that time. So with that, I need a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Section 8(1)B of the Michigan Open Meetings Act and upon request of the students, parents, guardians, for the purpose of conducting hearings to consider the reinstatement of students whose identity is known to the board as students 2022-2023-4 and student 2022-2023-5.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Heike.
It's been moved and supported to enter into closed session pursuant to Section 8(1)B of the Michigan Open Meetings Act and upon request of the students, parents, guardians for the purpose of conducting hearings to consider the reinstatement of students whose identity is known to the board as 2022-2023-4 and 2022-23-5. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, it's been moved and supported to enter into closed session. Ms. Heike?
Sislo,
Yes.
Farrow,
Yes.
Freight,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heike, yes, Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
All right, we're entering into closed session at 7:02. I will offer the following resolution. The special meeting of the Board of Education, the board was held in the district office boardroom located at 100 Big Red Drive, Milan, Michigan, 48160 within the boundaries of the district on the 14th day of August 2023 at 7 p.m. The meeting was called to order by 7 p.m. by President Sislo, and the following preamble and resolution are offered. On December 6, 2022, the board expelled a student whose identity is known to the board as 2022-2023-4 for violating those sections of the Milan Middle School Code of Conduct prohibiting threats, harassment, and intimidation. On August 1st, 2023, pursuant to the revised school code, the district received a petition for the student's reinstatement. Pursuant to the revised school code and board policy, a committee to review the reinstatement petition was created. The committee was comprised of 2 board members, 1 school administrator, 1 school staff member, and 1 parent. Number 4, the committee considered the reinstatement petition and information provided to it by the student's family and by the superintendent. Number 5, following its review, the committee made a recommendation to the board. The committee's recommendation was based on the consideration of each of the 7 factors identified in sections 1311A, 5E of the revised school code. Number 6, at the request of the student's parent or guardian and authorized by the Michigan Open Meetings Act, Section 8(1)B and 8(1)H MCL 15.628(1)B, the reinstatement hearing was conducted in a closed session meeting of the board. Number 7, the board thoroughly reviewed and deliberated upon the committee's recommendation and independently reviewed and deliberated upon all the information provided to the committee and to the board. Now therefore be it resolved that based on the consideration of the 7 factors identified in section 1311A5E of the revised school code, the student's petition for reinstatement is conditionally granted effective August 28, 2023, subject to the following conditions. The student must remain in counseling through the end of the 2023-24 school year and or until the counselor provides documentation that additional sessions are no longer needed. The middle school administration must receive periodic updates from the student's counselor. If any issues arise, the family should inform the Milan Middle School administration. B, the student and parent guardians must follow all aspects of the reentry plan created by the Milan Middle School administration. C, the student must participate in regular meetings with the school social worker or counselor. And D, the student must remain actively engaged in the educational process. Number 2, consistent with the section 11A and 13111 of the revised school code, the board finds that the school's interests and mission are served by this resolution. The administration is directed and authorized to implement all terms of this resolution and has delegated all necessary authority to do so. And 4, all resolution or parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. I need a motion and support for that read resolution.
Moved by Pharaoh.
Support by Murray.
It's been moved and supported to conditionally reinstate student 2022-2023-4 in accordance with the attached resolution as read by myself. Is there any questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to conditionally reinstate student 2022-2023-4 in accordance with the attached resolution as read by myself. Ms. Heika.
Pharaoh,
Yes.
Freight,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika, yes. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next, I offer this next resolution. Whereas on December 6, 2022, the board expelled a student whose identity is known to the board as student 2022-2023-5 for violating those sections of the Milan Middle School Code of Conduct prohibiting harassment and intimidation. 2, on July 14, 2023, pursuant to the revised school code, the district received a petition for the student's reinstatement. 3, pursuant to the revised school code and board policy, a committee to review the reinstatement petition was created. The committee was comprised of 2 board members, 1 school administration, 1 school staff member, and 1 parent. Number 4, the committee considered the reinstatement petition and information provided to it by the student's family and by the superintendent. 5, following its review, the committee made a recommendation to the board. The committee's recommendation was based on consideration of each of the 7 factors identified in sections 1311A, 5E of the revised school code. Number 6, at the request of the student's parent guardian and as authorized by the Michigan Open Meetings Act, Section 81B and 81H, MCL 15.268, 1B, the reinstatement hearing was conducted in a closed session meeting of the board. 7, the board thoroughly reviewed and deliberated upon the committee's recommendation and independently reviewed and deliberated upon all the information provided to the committee and to the board. Now therefore be it resolved that based on the consideration of the 7 factors identified in section 1311A 5E of the revised school code, the student's petition for reinstatement is conditionally granted effective August 28, 2023, subject to the following conditions. The student must remain in counseling through the end of the 2023-24 school year or until the counselor provides documentation that additional sessions are no longer needed. The middle school administration must receive periodic updates from the student's counselor. If any issues arise, the family should inform the middle school administration. B, the students and guardians must follow all aspects of the reentry plan created by the Milan Middle School administration. C, the student must participate in regular meetings with school, social worker, or counselor. And D, the student must remain actively engaged in the educational process. 2, consistent with section 11A and 13111 of the revised school code, the board finds that the school's interests and the mission are served by this resolution. 3, the administration is directed and authorized to implement all terms of this resolution and has delegated all necessary authority to do so. And number 4, all resolutions or parts of resolutions that conflict with the previous provisions of this resolution are rescinded. I need a motion to conditionally reinstate student 2022-2023-5 in accordance with the resolution as read by myself.
Motion by Rosenleacher.
Support by Gutierrez.
It's been moved and supported to conditionally reinstate student 2022-2023-5 in accordance with the attached resolution as read by myself. Is there any questions or concerns? All right, it's been moved and supported to conditionally reinstate student 2022-2023-5 in accordance with the attached resolution as read by myself. Ms. Heika.
Freight,
Yes.
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Heika, yes. Murray,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Sislo,
Yes.
Pharaoh.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
The next item of business is communications and community engagement and public comments. A reminder that this meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public meeting. There's one time for public participation during this meeting as indicated in the agenda. When addressing the board, you'll be asked to state your name. The board determines the amount of time granted to individuals or groups to speak. Each person shall be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. Board members may question speakers but are not obligated to answer questions or make statements or commitments in response to issues raised by the public. In general, such items will be referred to the superintendent for advisement, investigation, study, and/or recommendation, or designated as future agenda items for board consideration. Thank you for staying after and to let us get through those student reinstatement hearings. That was the main purpose of the special meeting. As you are aware, we do have some new technology here. So when you'll come up to that podium and you'll speak into that microphone, and we do have a timer here that'll have the 3 minutes that'll indicate the time that you have to speak. So with that, are there any students who would like to address the board? Are there any public members who'd like to address the board?
Andrea Bennick, and I'm assuming this is on.
Yep,
Okay,
you're
thank
set.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I wasn't able to attend last week's board meeting, but took the time to listen to it. And I'm grateful for the courage of the teachers and community members who spoke during public comment, bringing to light the probability of ending a reading program at Milan High School. I know there are two sides to every story, but the testimony of teachers speaking to the Board of Education is very compelling. I was glad to see the board take seriously the concerns brought to their attention. Milan Area Schools has a goal of highlighting and bringing equity to the district. If equity is defined as freedom from bias or favoritism, and equity of services is defined as equal access to what each student needs, then the elimination of this reading program needs to be re-examined. Targeted intervention classes for students who need support are just as necessary as AP classes are for students who seek and need a higher level of academic challenges. If the numbers that were presented at the last meeting are accurate in terms of students identified as reading below grade level, then in no way does it make sense to eliminate a program that specifically provides support to address and elevate the necessary skill set of functional literacy. In addition to the needed support for functional literacy, a big topic of concern in the reading world is identifying and supporting learners with dyslexia. While teaching students with that particular diagnosis requires a specific type of intervention, having a specific reading program with a teacher who is highly skilled at teaching reading allows for those students to be more easily identified and supported. Asking teachers to teach students with identified needs, but not giving them the full set of tools to be able to teach them, only sets up your students, staff, and families to feel defeated and unsupported. Those who are able to leave for better supports will do so. Those who are not able to leave the district will be less supported. All this does is create a larger equity, ability, and achievement gap. Instead of remedying an inequity, it will be further enlarged. The need for support in basic academics does not stop when a student reaches the high school level. If anything, the level of support may need to be intensified considering the encroaching time limit in the public education system. If Milan's goal is to prepare every student for success, then this level of targeted, tiered support for students identified as having a very specific need should remain in place. As Ms. Glushin noted, students in the reading program are comfortable working at their level because they are with peers who are also in need of the same supports. Most students will not seek out tutoring or specialized support before or after school for a variety of reasons, stigma being one of them. Many students will resent support in a classroom with peers who don't need that same support, again, because of stigma. One of our board members noted in comments that their student needed targeted intervention for reading and that they had to enlist the support of outside help. This district needs to remember that outside help is not always affordable, available, or even feasible for some students. If the district's responsibility is to address the educational needs of all their students and provide for them accordingly, The old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it is applicable here.
Thank you for the comment.
You're welcome.
Are there others?
Hi, Tricia Lorette. I have a student here in the high school, and I did speak at last meeting to you all, and I hope that you heard those comments. I am excited to hear what Mr. Gearbaugh will report on today. I would ask that you take into consideration, at the last meeting I talked about how much progress my child made, and it's probably the most progress he's made in his entire academic career in one single school year with Miss Glushin. To me, that's huge. In high school, those supports don't exist for kids who either are almost non-existent for those kids who either don't have IEPs or don't excel at the very high academic levels. So those kids that are kind of in that gray middle area, unless they have a parent that advocates for them, they don't get that support, right? And so I'm here to advocate for my child, but advocate for all those other kids who, for whatever reason, their parents can't advocate for them, whether it be because they're at school, they have work, they're a single parent, they don't have transportation, whatever those issues are, I'm here to advocate for those kids as well. Reading is a fundamental skill throughout life. If you can't read, you really can't do anything, right? You can't fill out a job application. You can't even help your own children learn to read when you become a parent. I was told by a school administrator when my child was transitioning into high school that a C was acceptable. And maybe for some that is, but why should that be the standard? And why are we not striving to push our students for more, especially if they get the right supports? Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Hello, I'm Jim Brusso. I spoke last time, and I'll try to be much briefer this time. There were a couple things that I wanted to add because I'm not sure I presented them correctly. First off, when we're talking about students in these the classes that we want to keep, they're general ed, special ed, and 504 students. It's not just one of those three groups. Secondly, I don't know if I made it clear, but I think it's important at the high school that we make a specific effort to inform parents about their child's reading level. As a special educator, I do that at their annual IEP meeting, but there's not a specific time for other students to be able to get that. The only thing close, and it's not really that close, is when they get sent home the PSAT results, and I find those reports difficult to understand unless you understand testing results as an educator. I wanted to thank the Board of Education members for their comments this past meeting. It showed me two things: that you heard us, which we all know all of us want to be heard by others when we're concerned, and that you understand the importance of helping all our students increase their functional literacy level. Thank you for supporting and caring for all of our students.
Thank you for the comment.
Do I get to push the green button?
You don't have to.
All right.
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name is George Elder. I'm standing in front of you because I'm thrown off about you removing reading courses from the high school. According to niche.com, 67 of our students in Milan area school are not up to grade level in reading. 67% is 2 out of 3. That would be like Milan saying, we'll no longer care when the red and green lights go out on the traffic lights stop working. We'll be fine with just the yellow. I've heard the following: you decided to entertain a 6-hour day, and for that possible you needed to remove a course. So you selected reading for removal. You decided to integrate reading support into each class, so you removed it from special classes. The plan removes a certified teacher from the instructions. With 67% of students not able to read grade level, taking the reading courses out seems dangerous to the future of our youth and our community. Also alarming is that we've had heard that students fail one subject, they are not eligible for graduation. Now, I don't know if that's true, I just heard that. Why won't they be more likely to fail a subject if they can't read it, or are we setting our students and the community up for failure? As an additional concern, I'll raise that 4 months ago, Avery Powell, a student board member, had asked Mr. Gerbach during the school board meeting how the high school shift from 7 classes to 6 classes would affect the students in the programs. Gerbach responded that she should talk to Mr. Shin. And then in the same time frame, Rachel Hobbs, a parent, asked questions and not one person would answer her. But now the teachers who appear to be great advocates for our students are starting to fuss. There is an investigation, but we're a week away from school starting. This raises huge flags. 4 months ago, when the students and parents were asking questions, we should have had the answers, but maybe we could have worked with now and visibly concerned teachers and the board to find better solution for our community. I have a 9th grade student new to the high school this year who is part of the 67%. I work full-time and I rely on the schools to give her academic instructions. So with this new plan, now is she going to get the reading support she needs, comprehend basic life skills like find a job application, doctor's notes, prescription warnings, monthly bills? I'm asking the board to take into consideration the 67% of students that are not up to grade level in reading and keep the reading courses in the high school. This shouldn't be up for debate. Reading is essential to survival. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
Jennifer Glushin. Let me begin by also saying that when I left the board meeting the other night, I felt really good about the fact, like Mr. Brousseau said, you heard us, you responded directly to things that were said, and you clearly understand the value of reading. The reason I came forward at all was because I am frustrated, but I'm also confused. I can teach academic literacy. I'm certified to do it. I also have a master's in reading at the secondary level. I've had frustrations this year. I did say I was thinking about applying to go elsewhere. I was asked by 2 administrators, what can we do to keep you here? And I said, you leave the reading courses in place. You leave those in place, and I will teach anything else in the rest of the day. You leave those in place, and you have your certified reading teacher. If you want to make a change, don't do it and leave kids without support for a year. Make your change throughout the year while I'm teaching them. Get another teacher certified in some reading program. Get someone else the education they need. Introduce a new program. That makes sense to me if that's the change they want to make. This gap year, this is crazy to me. This year, kids will not have the reading support they need, and I said, I will stay if there is a reading program. I cannot stay happily in a district and watch kids who struggle with reading continue to struggle because we made a choice to let that happen. West Ed runs the academic literacy course. There are some issues right now with West Ed and our WISD. They will not allow someone who's not trained to teach the course. I'm still here at this point. I will stay. I love Milan kids, and I love kids who can't read. And if that's what I'm doing, then you've got all of me invested in that. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
So, I was looking up marginalized.
Can I have your name, please?
Yeah, you know it. It's Holly. Definition of marginalized is a person or group treated as insignificant or peripheral, which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure several of you have claimed that that's why you ran to even be on this board, was because you cared so much about being a champion for marginalized kids. Apparently, you only meant some of those. Lisa Sanders has spoken before you guys several times over the last year or 2 years. She has several kids that have the diagnosis of dyslexia. She knows how to spot it and how to help with it. And she came before you and she started crying when she explained to you that one of her other children came home from school and said that she was reading 5 grades below her grade level. And Lisa felt so horrible that she missed it. And then she very passionately explained that Milan missed it. This was almost a year after she had given you several different books on dyslexia and given you several different facts of why you guys should be looking into different issues like that more, because there wasn't enough support in the school. I believe you guys bragged that Jan Kiger bought some of the titles. I don't know that any of you read them. I don't know. You never discussed them at any of your board meetings. However, point being, this issue that they're talking about, this issue that you decided to actually move away from providing more resources for, has been brought to your attention by parents, by other staff members, and by students several times before. So this isn't something that you guys just weren't aware of, and yet you claim to care so much about marginalized kids. I can't imagine a more marginalized person than someone who's going to walk out of high school with a degree, but with a high school diploma, but can't read. How are they going to go to college and be successful or not just be stuck with student loans if they even get into college or even get into the trades and be able to go through any kind of trade skill program? How? If they can't read, they can't learn, period. That's what you did. The only silver lining to this whole nightmare that you guys are creating is that at least now less kids will be able to read all the porn you keep in the library.
Thank you for the comment. Are there others? All right, thank you for those comments this evening. Next up, in the area of personnel and leadership, I need a motion to appoint the following person to the administrative position listed and base salary listed effective immediately. Brad Baden to be the Milan Middle School Assistant Principal.
Moved by Farrow.
Support by Heika.
It's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the administrative person listed and base salary listed effective immediately. Brad Baden as the Milan Middle School Assistant Principal. Mr. Gearbaugh.
We are just excited to be able to bring someone from inside the district who has gone back while teaching and got his administrative degree. He is very qualified, interviewed with the middle school team. He was their top choice. The district administration, as according to our hiring procedures, interviewed him. We also felt he was very qualified for the position, and we are excited to bring him to you for approval this evening.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Sislo.
Yes, Ms. Frey.
Mr. Gearbout, as Mr. Baden is also a part of our staff already, does this create an opening at the high school within the science department?
Yes, it does, and that position was posted this morning.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, it's been moved and supported to appoint the following person to the administrative position listed and base salary listed effective immediately. Brad Baden to be the Milan Middle School Assistant Principal. Ms. Heika.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Heika, yes. Murray.
Yes.
Rosenleacher.
Yes.
Sislo.
Yes.
Farrow.
Yes.
Freight.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next up on the agenda is in the area of learning environment and culture is the Milan High School Reading Support Report. So at the last meeting, there were concerns brought up in regards to the reading supports at the high school. We did ask Mr. Gearbaugh to look into it and then to provide a report in regards to the reading supports at Milan High School, and he and Mr. McMahon are going to go through that report for the board and for the community that are here. And then this meeting will be, it's recorded, so it'll be available once it's posted to the YouTube as well. So, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Sislo. As a leader of Milan area schools, I challenge my administrators to always look towards the future. Milan area schools is dedicated to adapting to changing times and shifting circumstances. We plan for continuous improvement, involve our stakeholders in decision-making, and always put students first. Administrators are challenged to leverage all of their resources and do what is best for our learners. Over the last 2 years, the high school administration understood that Mr. Baden would be looking for an administrative position, either in Milan or another district. I appreciate the board's approval of Mr. Baden's appointment to the middle school assistant principalship earlier this evening. I mention this because the high school administration also planned for this possible change in staffing by supporting another teacher to be trained to teach the advanced placement seminar class previously taught by Mr. Baden. We have examples all the time of how our administrators are looking forward and changing with changing times. The development of the plan contained in this evening's report, requested by the board, started around January of 2023. The plan was necessitated by the shift to a 6-hour day, an anticipated change in ELA staffing, and a desire to increase the number of struggling readers who will receive support at Milan High School. In the early stages of development, we also felt it was important to involve several ELA staff members, as well as staff members from other departments, in the implementation of a redesigned support program for our struggling readers. We recognize that our current implementation hinged on the expertise of one individual. The high school leadership team, made up of 14 Milan High School staff members, was highly involved in the shift to the 6-hour day and was also aware of the changes that would be necessitated by that shift. They were on board with the shift and fully supported the change. Throughout the year, the plan continued to be developed and changes were discussed with the high school leadership team. Departments experiencing change were also involved in the process. Mrs. Glushin, Mr. Brousseau, and I had several separate conversations about their concerns regarding academic literacy. On June 2nd, Mr. Brousseau sent me a lengthy email with an attachment regarding this matter. The attachment was his suggestion of a plan. I responded with a lengthy email that provided details about the direction the district was headed. The plan I am presenting tonight is simply a more robust version of that email. Interestingly enough, Mr. Brousseau's plan and the district's plan are very similar. While this report was requested by the Board of Education to discuss the changes in methods used to support our struggling readers at Milan High School, the report will also include other information pertinent to the conversation. Part 1 of the report is understanding the reason behind Milan High School seeking alternatives to a double-blocked elective ELA class for at-risk freshmen and sophomores and an elective and second math class for SAT intervention integrated math. The Milan High School staff and administration proposed changing to a 6-hour day for the 23-24 school year. This process was discussed at multiple leadership meetings and was fully supported by all departments at the high school. Central office and the board were made aware of these changes and a community meeting was held. This decision was in line with the building internal review process, the district strategic plan, and board goals regarding student achievement. The following are key discussion points when looking at the impact of changing to a 6-hour school day. 1, it will increase core instructional time by the equivalent of 25 days per year in all 6 classes the students now take. 2, Big Red time will provide more opportunities for Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention, career readiness meetings, and decreased interruptions of educational courses. 3, this will decrease the number of transitions throughout the school day. 4, increased learning time for our most at-risk Southwest Washtenaw Consortium students will increase. Previously, those students would return to school and would be late for their 4th-hour class every day. Under the 6-hour schedule, those students will no longer miss that 25 minutes of a class here at Milan High School each day. This effort was supported by teacher consultants and counselors to reduce the course load for our students. With the transition to a 6-hour day, an emphasis was placed on ensuring that our students would not lose access to core elective courses such as band, choir, industrial arts, art, business, and agricultural sciences. Administration and instructional staff also emphasized that ensuring that Milan High School would place priority on not increasing class sizes in core graduation courses. Both of these goals have been met as the 23-24 school year master schedule has been built. For the 23-24 school year, the master schedule focused on ensuring students had access to core classes and electives, keeping class sizes smaller, not reducing staff, and following best practices for teacher prep numbers. When running the master schedule, every ELA teacher currently has 3 preps, and 3 of the 4 math teachers also have 3 preps. Impact on courses being offered. Given all of the above information and constraints, the decision was made to look at alternative programming related to the 3 full-year intervention courses, Academic Literacy 10, and Integrated Math. In addition to the intervention courses, other courses were also impacted. AP Statistics, AP Language, and AP US History were reduced from 2 sections to 1, and AP Physics is not running this year. Class sizes in these sections were increased to support the goal of lowering general education class sizes. The reduction of these 7 sections of courses allowed for the master schedule to run without impacting core graduation requirements and core electives. However, as was noted in the presentation, the reduction meant 4 fewer courses available over the course of a 4-year period, meaning that students will only take 24 classes instead of 28 in their 4 years at Milan High School. Part 2, what was the plan currently for math and reading intervention courses? In ELA, a list of 20 to 25 freshmen and sophomore students would be identified during the early phases of 9th grade through SRI scores and placed into Academic Literacy ELA 9. The majority of those students would then repeat that process their sophomore year with Academic Literacy in ELA 10. These students would earn 2 ELA credits and 2 elective credits in their freshman and sophomore years combined. The strengths of those programs are that students generally completed both years of the programming. On average, students saw gains in their SRI scores, some with significant gain. Very low failure rates were reported, and high-quality teaching and instruction was provided by the teacher. The challenges of this model is that following their sophomore year, Milan High School provided no direct reading intervention to any of the junior or senior students. No other ELA or TC staff members provided direct instruction using academic literacy framework during support time or core academic time. This system limited intervention to between 20 and 25 students per grade level. In addition, double blocking for ELA meant a reduction in 2 elective choices for those students taking the course. In math, integrated mathematics was offered to all junior level math students as an intervention for college and career readiness standards offered in state testing. Typically, 65 to 75% of Milan High School students were able to accommodate this second math course in their junior schedule. As with academic literacy, integrated math did not count as a math credit within the Michigan Merit curriculum. The strengths of this program were that on average, students saw gains in SAT scores, some with significant increases. Very low failure rates were reported, and high-quality teaching and instruction was provided by multiple teachers. Challenges. This year-long double-blocked math course meant a reduction in 1 elective for those students taking the course. No direct math intervention occurred during the other high school years. No specific training was provided for the math or TC staff members in that math intervention, in other math intervention strategies. During the 23-24 school year, the plan for math is that the math department leadership and staff have already begun the process of integrating college readiness intervention and specific state testing preparation into the additional time allotted by the longer class periods for each class. This is in addition to the normal class standards. Increased emphasis will be placed on the junior year with its implications for post-secondary education. Consideration of hiring an additional TC to lead a small learning center model with math class for Algebra 1 and geometry courses is in the works. We actually have offered the position to a candidate we are waiting. She needs to get her Michigan teaching certificate as she's taught in other states. She is a special ed certified teacher with a background in engineering and would be able to support our students in those classes. And that would be an added teacher consultant position. Additional TC support will be put in place of paraprofessional support in higher needs classrooms for Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 classes. In ELA and Social Studies, based on the data provided by a Milan High School TC, 3 sections of at-risk ELA courses were created in June of 2023. These sections consist of approximately 20 to 25 students in 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. Students were spread out throughout the day. One section will be with our returning experienced teacher, while the other 2 will be spread out over 2 other teachers. The experienced teacher, if she returns, will help provide support and training to the other staff members to incorporate key points of the academic literacy curriculum into these English classes. The administration will provide support in both time and resources as needed. This will provide an increase in overall access to intervention for 3 grade levels and will help set the base training for additional ELA staff. This will ensure that multiple teachers are trained and that Milan High School transitions to full compliance with MDE reading certification guidelines will occur. Using a certified on-staff reading apprenticeship trainer, the Social Studies Department will receive both a refresher of RA best practices during our opening day PD programming and then continue PD for advanced instructional practices during follow-up PD on our regularly scheduled days. 100% of ELA teachers and TCs will receive continuous RA training from a certified on-site staff during department meetings and regularly scheduled PD days. 100% of the ELA teachers and TCs will receive classroom or intervention support through training by our experienced teacher. The district will support additional training for literacy-specific interventions for teachers and TCs. Consideration of deploying a TC to lead small learning center model ELA classes for ELA 9 and ELA 10 courses will be implemented, and additional TC support will be put in place of paraprofessional support for the 3 at-risk sections of ELA. Milan Area Schools has an extremely successful and fully implemented reading program and reading intervention model in our K-5 buildings. Our reading program have welcomed multiple high-performance districts into their buildings to share how they continue to outperform peer districts in student growth. K-5 teachers and administration continue to create an amazing success story as the continual improvement of programming as our demographics change. In addition, the middle school has incorporated key literacy strategies across the ELA and social studies programs. They are also adding an AARI intervention program run by an on-site TC trained specifically in AARI instructional strategies. This intervention will provide significant high-level small group support to significantly struggling readers at Milan Middle School. These programs and other continuous improvement have meant that Milan High School receives the vast majority of incoming 9th grade students at or within 1 to 2 grade levels in reading literacy skills as documented on NWEA and state testing. Milan High School continues to perform above state and national averages on the SAT. Although our past reading interventions were effective, the goal at Milan High School is to expand on the success of our RAAL course and that of our K-8 teachers to create a truly continuous layer of ELA and reading support across all grade levels. Expanding reading intervention to all grade levels across content areas and to multiple staff members to instruct will ensure continuity of knowledge as staff turnover inevitably occurs. During the 23-24 planning school year, the administration will make sure that the following things occur. Administration will work with the ELA, TC, and Teaching and Learning Focus Group to provide a timeline and resources to support possible Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading intervention programming for the 24-25 school year. ELA department will devote department and building PD towards implementing RAAL and RA strategies into all ELA curriculum. TCs will devote department meeting time to implementing RAAL and RA strategies into all curriculum, affirming our academic literacy approach. The Teaching and Learning Focus Group will make both the MTSS and assessments focus points for building professional development. The district will develop a literacy and writing tiered intervention model with clear entry and exit points for all students, and cross-building professional development with the ELA teachers at Milan Middle School will occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. questions and concerns regarding that report? I just, so currently, there's no literacy class for juniors and seniors
Correct.
in the current plan?
Correct.
But this new plan that you described would provide for that?
This new plan will have sections of ELA 9, ELA 10, and ELA 11 that have the students who need reading support grouped into them. The class sizes in all of the English classes were intentionally kept small for the 23-24 school year. Those sections will earn the students their ELA credit as long as, and as well as allow the teachers in those classrooms to provide the reading support to the students. The teachers know that those sections can be run differently than the other sections of ELA 9, 10, and 11. They will meet the state guidelines, but will also provide that reading support in those sections.
Mr. Gearbaugh, I just want to clarify one thing. In both the math and ELA, you said addition of teacher consultant, TC support. So previously, for intervention purposes, we've used para-eds for some of that support, and now we're looking at adding certified teachers. Is that correct?
Yes, we had a teacher consultant that was in the reading classes with the teacher. We now have a new teacher consultant who is also a certified English teacher, who will be helping support in the English classrooms as well as the other classrooms, in addition to the teacher consultant that was doing that in the past. So our goal is to get more TC time into all classrooms supporting reading. Parapros will still be there, but we'll also layer on a teacher consultant specifically focusing on reading.
Thank you.
Mr. Sislo? Or Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you. Mr. Gearbaugh, if I'm understanding this right, and forgive me, I'm not a K-12 educator, and so creating master schedules is a bit out of my wheelhouse. But if I'm understanding correctly, under the 7-hour day, there were 2 courses that the students requiring interventional supports participated in, an academic literacy course and their regular ELA course.
Correct. Their regular ELA course earned them their English credit, and then the reading course earned them an elective credit.
And now the academic literacy course is being discontinued and being replaced by an extended, in terms of time, ELA course.
Correct. With the integration of the curriculum that was in the literacy class being integrated into those classrooms, as well as additional supports being pushed into all other classrooms, social studies specifically.
And what is the additional amount of time per class period that students will have, moving from a 7-hour to a 6-hour day?
It's about 9 minutes a day, which, when you add that up over the school year, is the equivalent of 25 additional days of each class.
Okay. And in the proposed new model, those students requiring additional interventional support will be placed into the same ELA course, like they were with the academic literacy, that 20 to 25 students per grade.
Correct.
Okay. And what I understand is that the ELA courses, under the new model, will be taught by one experienced teacher and then 2 additional teachers who will be receiving training of the reading supports. Am I right? Am I correct in that?
Yes, if the teacher chooses to say that teacher would be teaching the freshman class, and then we have ELA certified teachers who hold the same certification that will be teaching the 10th grade and the 11th grade class.
But as of now, those teachers do not have, forgive me for,
They don't have the master's degree,
they
but
don't
they hold
have
the
a
same.
specific certification in teaching reading.
Neither does the teacher currently teaching it.
Neither does the teacher currently teaching it. Okay. And is the expectation,
She does.
I looked up her certification today. She does not hold the certifications required to teach a specific reading course.
and is the expectation, I heard you say that these sections can be run differently, so that the possibility for that is that these specific sections can be run in a way to provide the reading supports. Is that the expectation from an administrative and
Yes. that is the
curriculum-based point
expectation,
of view?
And that will be monitored.
Okay. And so if none of the teachers who are teaching those sections currently have the certification, what are the supports for those teachers in providing those interventional resources to those students?
If the teacher remains, that teacher would be involved in helping support them. If not, we will get support for those teachers from outside of the school district.
Okay.
Are you done, Ms. Goody?
I'm thinking, but
That's
I'm
okay, I
done
don't
for
wanna
now.
interrupt
Yes.
you. Okay.
Thank you.
So, I have a lot of questions. When we reduce the day from 7 classes to 6 classes, because we keep saying 7 hours to 6 hours, but I want to make clear that the day is still the same amount of time. So we went from 7 classes to 6 classes. When we did that, were there any other elective courses that we dropped from the catalog?
There were some AP courses that were doubled up or removed, and elective classes are always all listed, but if we don't get enough students that choose them, then they're not held.
Okay. And if I understand the report correctly, the reading class and the integrative math class were treated as an elective.
Correct.
Okay. And then, I guess I don't have any other questions. I have concerns. My first concern is that while I appreciate that there's 9 additional minutes in each core class, I'm not convinced that those 9 minutes will make up for the intense instruction that these students would have received in one reading class or the integrative math class. Because I want to make clear that this is the first time we're also talking about the integrative math class no longer being offered, which I also find concerning. I'm concerned that this extra 9 minutes may obviously gives you more time when you're just dealing with math generally, or if we're dealing with literature generally or science generally. But I just don't think it's enough time to deal with this very specific issue of reading. I'm also very concerned that we are already asking so much of our core teachers. When we look at the class makeup, we're already asking them to differentiate and give everyone an individualized instruction. But now we're also going to be asking our social studies teachers, our math teachers, and our science teachers to also teach reading. And we're asking them to do that this year without providing them the training that they need ahead of time in order to be able to do that. So now when I think about, a standard math class or, a class that I hear a lot about, a standard biology class, we're not only expecting those teachers to differentiate amongst all those kids that are in there, which at the high school level can be well over 30. And so you'll have this group that's at this level, this group that's at this level, this group that's at this level. We've got TCs in there helping students who have IEPs that are in there. We're making accommodations for everyone, which is what we do, and we do it very well. But now we're asking these teachers to also teach reading. And I think that we're asking too much. And we're asking them to do that without giving them the training ahead of time to allow them to be able to do that. So I'm concerned about that.
A lot of our teachers have had the RA training in the past. We'll be doing refreshers with them. And it's not that we're asking them to teach reading, we're asking them to support good reading initiatives in their subject area.
Okay. So I agree with and I appreciate the fact that we are trying to plan for the future and inevitable staff turnover. But I don't think that providing these refreshers to our core teachers, especially this year, without more to plan for this gap year, is really the way to go. Sorry, I was drafting down stuff. So also, I think that, well, I do have one more question. So when we combine the AP Stats, language, and history, are those the three I read, I think, that we are combining, or reducing the number of sections?
Yes.
What are the class sizes in those classes?
Those classes will probably be rather large in the 30s.
In the 30s?
Yes.
Will it be more? Do we have any, let me ask you this. Do we have any current classes in AP Stats, language, or history that are 40? Okay. I guess at the end of the day, I remember discussions on this board pre-COVID about the importance of the integrated math class and how successful it was in helping our students increase their math SAT scores, and then we bragged about how great our SAT scores were. We also bragged about.
I just,
Oh,
can
go
I,
ahead.
that, it was also the ACT. Just
ACT,
it was
yes,
just
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You were absolutely right. That's important. The test has shifted since Andrew and I have been on the board. And we've also bragged about the success of this reading class. And if the numbers that were presented to us last week are correct, and from the report it seems that they are, it seems to me that these are two elective classes, remember these are electives, that we should keep. My own family's experience, we as a family made the decision, there was some pushing, but made the decision to take integrated math, even though math was not necessarily an issue that needed to be addressed. But from our perspective, you took integrated math and you maximized your strong suit, and it worked. And we know from the test scores that it has worked for other students. And so my suggestion would be, at least for this year, and then we can figure out how to address this next year in terms of the last, because I understand that students will go from 28 classes to 24 classes throughout their career here. My suggestion would be to keep integrated math, keep the reading class as an elective. Let parents and families decide what it is that they want to, how they want to maximize those opportunities here. Maybe there are students who won't take integrated. We know there are students already that don't take integrated math, and they'll take something else. But at least give them those opportunities so those students who need the reading course especially have that opportunity and can maximize their opportunities while they're here. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Sislo,
Yes, Mr. Farrow.
I want to piggyback off of what Michelle had indicated. I guess I'm confused why we would not continue to offer both of these courses as electives. That's my first question. The other comment that I have was, while this plan was shared with the admin team and with 14 different teachers and staff, what was shared with me as a board member is we're going from a 7-hour to a 6-hour day. I don't believe that it was shared with me that reading and integrated math was going to be dropped. And had I known that, I probably would have raised a concern at that time. The other question that I have is what type of communication has transpired between the high school administration and the parents of these kids that are going from 2 reading courses in the recent past to not having that this school year. So for example, at the last meeting, we were told there were, 80-some kids that needed this reading support. These kids were identified for needing that reading support. I guess I'm curious, was there any communication with these families about, hey, this is being dropped, this is being eliminated, here's what our plan and our change is going to be? Because I don't get the impression that parents were aware. And that concerns me. I don't know Ms. Glushin personally, but I have concerns when a teacher that has been with our district for as long as she has been with our district comes in front of our board and says, I'm concerned. I guess I'm trying to articulate it a little better, like, are not offering this because kids are going to choose this because they have to, and they are going to not meet our graduation requirements as a result. Hopefully I'm articulating that correctly. I have great faith in our admin team. I have great faith in our superintendent. I think I've made that very clear since I've been on this board. However, in this instance, I guess I want to reiterate, had I known as a board member that I didn't have any problems with the 7-hour day going to a 6-hour day. What I was not aware of was how we were going to be challenged, that these were the consequences of that decision, and that there were so many kids that needed the reading component. So I guess that's where I'm at, is I need to know, one, why is it that we can't offer these? And if it is the graduation component, then we have to figure that out, obviously. But there are going to be parents that are going to say, I want these supports. And if that means that it's going to take longer, or we as a board have to look at our graduation requirements, I think that that's appropriate. So that's all for now.
So just to respond to a couple of those. First, in math, a lot of our struggling math students didn't take the integrated math class. That was more a targeted class for our students preparing for the ACT test. The math department looked at it and said they felt that they could support all students with that needed instruction by integrating that material into the 3 math classes that all students take. So the students will receive that same support and an intensified version of that in their junior math class. So that won't be lost. It'll just be shifted to other courses. In reading, while we don't have the double blocked situation, we will have a English class at each grade level that has students in that section specifically because of their reading concerns, and will receive more intense support in that class for reading than in the other English classes. Putting these classes back on the master schedule not only has the effect of putting them back on, but will raise the class size in all of the other English classes, and possibly those English classes as well, because now you have fewer sections of those because you've created sections of these courses and put them back in the schedule. So it wouldn't just affect these classes, it would affect the class size in all of the other English classes, and if we did it in math, the other math classes.
Do we know what those increases would be?
I would have to look at how many sections we have in the English department, and building a master schedule is pretty intricate, so I can't tell you exactly. It might be anywhere, Mr. McMahon, you were high school principal, 3 to 5 students per class.
There's a lot of constraints that go into it, and Tom, it should not be oversimplified.
I'm sorry.
It should not be oversimplified that we're just choosing electives over certain classes. There are constraints with people's certifications and the schedule and how many classes you can teach. tons of constraints go into building a schedule. And so it's difficult to say if we just added these two and took out these two. I mean, we can give you estimates. I mean, you've taken out 30 kids from, so that's 60 kids we had to displace into, we have 5 1/3 English teachers, you know, so you're looking at 50, 60 sections. So it's gonna, you know, 4 or 5 kids a section, 10 kids a section, it's hard to say. But like I said last week, we have to leverage our resources, and we're doing the best we can to make those decisions based on the constraints that we have.
I want to say, I'm not as good at the sandwich discussion as Tom is, like good, bad, good. I want to say, I don't doubt that there's a lot of work that goes into this. I don't doubt that everyone's doing the best that they feel needs to be done to support all of our students. I think we just disagree about how that is. I think that's fair, but I don't want anyone in the administration or the community to think that I doubt anyone's intentions when doing this. To say exactly what Tom said, when we discussed this reduction of 7 to 6 courses, had I known then that this was going to be a consequence of that, I would have raised alarm bells a long time ago and did what I needed to do as a board member to prevent this or make known the need to keep these electives for our students. Because again, I go back to, I agree that that probably our struggling students may not have taken integrated math, and it was more focused towards kids to maximize, like our family did, SAT scores, but that's important. I mean, we rely on those test scores. We've been talking a lot about our test scores. And so I just hate to see, an elective class that clearly helped our struggling students be cut from the catalog, and then an elective class that helped with, students who are on a different path, maximize their opportunities as well.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
And Mr. Girba. I guess I want to start by clarifying some of the acronym language in your report. You're using RAAL, I assume, to signify the blend between reading apprenticeship and academic literacy?
That's the name of the course.
That's the name of the course. Okay.
Reading Apprenticeship Academic Literacy, it's sponsored by WestEd, who runs RA.
I'm sorry.
Write it down nice
I-
and slow
just-
so
yeah.
we can write it down.
WestEd's a
Reading.
company that sponsors Reading Apprenticeship. It's a program that all of our teachers got trained in back when I was principal here.
Yes.
And they created the course that we call Academic Literacy. It's called RAAL. So it's
Stands
the
for
same thing.
Reading.
I think it's Reading Apprenticeship Academic Literacy. Jen, is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just the longer acronym of that course.
Okay, thank you. And then AARI, can you clarify that one for me?
Yes, that's Accelerated Adolescent Reading Instruction, or it might be Adolescent Accelerated Reading Instruction. So that's a program that WestEd also sponsors, that Oakland County runs training is on. And the previous summer, Kim Rock, our TC, has been providing some instructional intervention and coaching at the middle school, was trained in AARI strategies. And we implemented sort of a pilot program last year on that, and we're trying to beef that up this year. Our end goal is to actually create a reading intervention at all the levels. K-8, we have outstanding reading intervention programs. $750,000 of grant funds goes towards supporting them at the K-8 level. We're trying to add at the middle school level while also integrating disciplinary literacies, which is what the foundation of RA is to teach academic discipline reading in your content area, which is actually the foundation of the academic literacy course. The units are based on 3 subject area courses. And so that's all good practice. We were trying to beef that up, trying to get back to the RA approach. Now that we're through the COVID thing, we can attempt to do that. And then eventually, we'd like to get AARI training up at the high school so we can run an actual intervention. The reading, the academic literacy course is not actually an intervention. As defined by an intervention is where you identify students and pull them, push them, a tier 2 type thing, and that changes. It's just a really good reading course that's structured around students that need that course for sure. And the math course is not an intervention either. It's just a specific course. So we want to actually build up to where we have a reading intervention at the high school level, where we're pulling kids. It's a dynamic, changing list of kids, because that's needed. We know that.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Sorry, that was quite a tangent.
No, that was extremely
What
helpful.
RAAL stands for.
Yeah, so I guess I have had reading apprenticeship training myself, quasi-familiar with, the tenets of it. But I would still say that that's not the same thing as literacy like reading skills instruction. So in the old format of the academic literacy class, was that type of like intensive intervention level instruction, that was not what that course was? Did I ask that clearly?
What do you mean the old format?
Well, so the way that this academic literacy course was previously taught,
Yeah.
you said that this was not an intervention per se. It was just an elective course that focused on reading strategies.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Focused on the content areas.
Yeah. So integrated within
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I think I'm hearing is that this can or will open up seats and access for more students across more grade levels to benefit from this type of instruction. Would that be a correct
Yes,
statement,
correct.
Mr. Gerba? Because currently it was only in
9th and 10th.
9th and 10th, and this would allow us to provide some additional support into 11th grade as well,
Correct.
with the goal being that eventually we're building a more robust intervention across all 9 through 12, going like
Yeah.
24, 25 and forward? Okay. So I appreciate that, and I think that that is a direction that our district does need to head, especially considering the level of support that we are able to provide K through 5, and where we are growing that at the middle school level from 6 through 8. But I share some of Ms. Heike's concerns, and I'm going to speak, I guess, a little bit from my own perspective as an educator, and having been through that train the trainer model. I think my primary question/concern is when and how is this training from our experienced staff member going to be provided, and what's being done to front load that as early as possible? Because even if the other two teachers who are going to be integrating this, more of this RA approach, even if they've had some training before, it's not this, have they gone to a full reading apprenticeship course outside of the district? Or can you speak a little bit to how that's going to be handled more specifically?
I don't right now know if those teachers have had the full RA training or not. One of them is new to the district, so there's a possibility not.
Right.
The training is going to happen during our planning times, during our times when teachers are meeting in their departments, on our 4 professional development days. It's going to start on the opening professional development day. We're going to continue to provide support as we can throughout the year and get them the trainings that we can. It will probably involve working to bring West Ed and getting West Ed involved in training those teachers. We just knew that it was time that we do have to get more teachers trained. We have to get more teachers involved in this program. And like I said, we had information leading up that we didn't know who was going to be here
Right.
in the English department.
Right. Yeah, I think, again, just kind of leaning back on my experience as a classroom teacher, the months of August and September, October, November, really everything leading up to Christmas break is a firestorm. And so it sounds like this training and refresher is kind of happening on the back of an experienced teacher who's probably got a lot of other stuff going on. And arguably those teachers who are going to receive said training are in that same firestorm. I used to call it the dark and evil vortex of September, October, November, and December. It's a thing. And so I just want to speak to that it feels like building the plane while we're trying to fly it. And I'm not saying that can't be done, because I've done it. We all did it, and quite admirably, I think. But I guess my ultimate question is, why do we have to do it that way? And why the ripping of the Band-Aid, if I could put it that way? Why so quick on the shift?
We were made aware in November that a teacher was not returning, and we had to make plans to get other teachers trained and start to look at what the master schedule could look like for the 23-24 school year. So there was a need to rip that Band-Aid off possibly. If the training doesn't take place from the current staff member who has that knowledge, then we will find someone outside of the district who can come in and provide that training.
Okay. I'm good for now. Thank you.
Mr. Sislo.
Yeah, Ms. Freight.
Thank you. And Mr. Gearbaugh. I appreciate everyone that came to last meeting and to this meeting as well, and then you and I assume Ryan putting all this together for us and giving it to us. And in reviewing it, I did a couple of different things, so I hope I labeled, thank you, Betty, the pages correctly. But when I kind of concur with, or I do, no kind ofs about it, with Mr. Farrow and Mrs. Heike about understanding that we were going from 7 to 6, but not understanding what all of that entailed and what would be cut. When you look at these as electives, I think that's fair enough to say, and getting involvement is fair enough to say. However, I also, both of my children, elected to take integrated math. And it did reflect in their SAT scores, because we had already changed to SAT then, just as Mrs. Heike's experience was. They elected not to take, at the time, the integrated English, because they had a teacher that would prepare them in that. So they chose to give up an elective to do that, and I agree with Mrs. Heike's thought in that providing them an elective to do that, and if they so choose to take that as an elective, that is their choice, just as band or choir. Mr. McMahon might recall a crazy meeting we had with my daughter, and she elected to take 5 APs. Not at all my idea, nor her father's, but definitely hers, and I think you can attest to that after that meeting. And that was her elected, and she had plenty of people that she believed in and trusted in that told her not to do that, to include Mr. McMahon and myself, that we really worried that that was crazy. And she told us that that is what she wanted to do, and based on that, she moved forward with it. And so when I look at what I believe is the very first page, and you have the attached 6-hour day transition presented to the staff and the community, I go to I think it was the second slide, but there's one in here which says, I believe this was presented to the community and the staff at the meeting you had, because we did invoke participation. We got everybody's opinion. It says on here, under graduation requirements and course offerings, that MHS will still offer all courses that are currently in our course catalog. Courses will be continued, or will continue to be offered based on student interest and teacher availability. And when I look under the course catalog, the 23-24, the 9th grade literacy, what is it called? Academic literacy is still listed. Now, I don't think it's something that the kids in that particular situation would choose to take, because I don't know that I think that's something that they'd need some guidance to take, because of stigmas and things that Mrs. Lorette kind of alluded to. But I do think that there are times, much like the integrated math and the integrated science, when you guide your students and say, this would be a class that's very good for you. We have the new integrated statistics class, I believe it is, or introduction, my apologies on the wrong thing, and I believe that was to give our students an ability to have a statistics class other than AP, to help further them, and there's a need for that with what our staff, our student demographic showed. There's a couple of things that need to be kind of looked at in that course catalog, if you will. I'm nitpicky, the board knows this. Kind of a side note, we might want to put Mrs. Gutierrez in there, because Mrs. Macchio is no longer with us, and now that we've officially elected him, probably want to change or update our assistant principal. But psychology is still in there, and in your report, it was eliminated. There's a couple of the classes that are in there that haven't ran for quite a while, and I remember asking you at least a couple of years ago, Mr. Gearbaugh, how do we do that? Do we leave them listed in there? What do we do? And you and I think, Ryan, I'm not sure, having discussions about, we make it very clear to the students that there needs to be a certain number to be able to run those, because as we discovered, our AP classes aren't always ran with 30. And yet we run them to the best of our students and do that. I know my daughter was fortunate enough, and I appreciate that, and that the district put forth the effort to run the AP calculus classes and the AP statistics classes with a lot lower numbers, but both of my children were able to reap the benefits of that. So I know there's challenges within that, but the fact that they're still in there and they are electives and allowing our kids to choose them And if they want to give up band because they want to read better, or if their parents are able to guide them to say, I want you to read better at ninth grade, you can take band at 10th grade, or I can do something different. I think that is an invaluable idea and presentation to them. And like Mr. Farrow said, as far as our parent involvement and letting our parents know, Ms. Lorette, if I can put you on the spot, I know her very well, and I'm pretty sure she'd probably tell that kiddo he's got to take it. That's how that goes. My kiddo, I knew her very well, and I did not say AP classes. So to have that choice is incredibly important for our kids, and to have taken that away, it seems very stark. And we really, you know, in our mission, in our vision, we want to look at the whole, the student as a whole, and how to get to their greatest potential. That integrated math is an elective for kids that are going to go to college. Great. But kids that aren't, and now integrating it in the other math classes if they're not, and if that, is that Khan Academy work by any chance? It's more than just Khan Academy, right? Okay. I was just knowing how much they hate the Khan Academy, so I was hoping there was something more to invoke their interest. But if the kiddo doesn't want, or sees a trade or a path of education that's not taking them to college, it seems like they should have the opportunity to just take their basic math and take that increased load that Mrs. Heike and Ms. Maria are alluding to off of that teacher, so that there is a teacher that wants to teach the kids college level readiness, then they take that class. If they don't, they're in that class. It alleviates some of that load. It also seems that our TCs are getting really loaded up, and that's a lot. We ask an awful lot of them. That's our job, I get it, but we can only stretch the resources we have. We do have to find the leverage. As far as we can do that, it seems a little too thin. I'm also concerned as I go through and I look at the big red time, and it says that it's going to be offered a minimum twice per month with no lost instructional time. How? Because if is the big red time, I don't know, I apologize, scheduled in every other week so that it does, how can it not take away from a core class and instructional time if it's not regular on the schedule?
I think what Mr. Shin meant by that comment is that when they run the Big Red Time, they'll run a 7-hour day, so no individual class would be eliminated from a schedule to run Big Red Time.
Okay,
So for that one day, they would shrink the classes back to the 7-hour day schedule.
but then it's only 2 days. So if you get more opportunities for those interventions, it doesn't seem like, in my humble opinion, I mean, you guys know better than me. It just doesn't seem like it does kind of take away from the instruction if the point of going to 6 is that additional 9 minutes. So I worry, my concern is that we're dumping an awful lot on our teacher consultants and our counselors. That's on you guys to decide, because you guys know what their abilities and they're capable of doing. I worry about taking away an elective that I think arguably our community and our students can choose to take, especially if those options are still within our course catalog. That seems like the best of both worlds. I understand the scheduling debacle and the master schedule thing. I've watched it go in so many directions. I don't know how you guys do that at all. Mr. McMahon, if I can,
Can I respond quickly to the course catalog?
Sure.
So the course catalog normally gets updated as we enter the scheduling time of the year. So we don't necessarily update that every week or every month. So that would get updated, new board members' names, new courses. A lot of times we don't remove courses from the course catalog, because if we remove them and they're not in the course catalog for a period of time, it's the possibility that if we wanted to reinstitute them, we would have to go back and re-seek NCAA approval of those classes. So it's not a good idea, even if we're not going to offer a class necessarily, to pull it out of the course catalog. That can cause issues down the road. So that's some of the reasoning behind those decisions.
No, and you've explained that to me before, because we've had in-depth conversations about that. I do question, though, and I asked you about this before, was there anything new in, like, the humanities itself is totally redone? When we approved it to go to the state, I remember asking you, is there anything different or new in this? And you were like, it's just what we send to the state. But when I look at the chart on here, and much like Mr. Farrow, Ms. Murray, my fellow board members have said, the elimination of things is huge. And the, reintroduction, you guys do that, it just seems like things were kind of revamped and some things were removed. and to hold on to that concept of we don't want to remove them in the event that we can come back and we need them, I think that goes to me and Mrs. Heike's point of offer them as an elective. And just like AP classes, if we only have 8 kids that are in AP, like physics this year, right? We don't have enough kids in AP physics. We're not running it this year. And if we see a trend in that literacy class not having enough people, then we see the trend and we know that, I mean, the kids, both of my children have signed up for classes and then been told there's not enough, that's adaptable. But to take it away, especially when it's on both levels, if you will, the reading literacy program, you can opt to take it as an elective. It was always taught as an elective. The integrated program's always offered as an elective credit. It substantially helped. It was something that we considered an asset for so many different years. To take that away seems very harsh. And then the behest of adding more to our teachers, adding more to our TCs. We're already adding an awful lot with the change to 6. Seems like a little bit slowing up the change would be beneficial to everyone. I don't know if it's possible, but I too, like Mr. Farrow alluded to, would have liked to have known a lot more concerning the change if this is what is heading our students, especially our juniors and seniors this year, because that really changes those electives, especially your college-bound kids are what gets a lot for your college-bound kids and your consortium and things. There's an awful lot that went into that, and I apologize to the community for not having enough foresight to have asked more questions, because I do feel like we're not as prepared as we should have been to be able to support not only our administration, but the decision.
I think it's important to note that a switch from a 7-hour day to a 6-hour day actually alleviates some of the expectations on our TCs and our teachers, because they're not preparing for 7 classes a day. So it's not going to add to their need. That's part of the reason the teacher consultants, when we took the 6-hour day to them, were in support of it, because it's now less classes they have to get into each day to support.
Is it common that all of our teachers have 3 preps, though?
We have teachers that have anywhere from 1 to 5 preps. We can't require them to teach more than 3 without their approval.
Correct. And is it not more financially responsible to run it 7 hours than it is 6 hours?
There's really not a whole lot of difference financially.
Between the two?
We're not adding any teachers or removing any teachers. There's really no major change between a 7-hour day and a 6-hour day.
Except that we are removing the courses, or the offering of some of the courses.
Some sections are being combined and other courses are not offered, correct? But the material in those courses will be offered in other ways.
Other questions or concerns?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
I've been thinking a lot about this, and as I've been listening to my fellow board members, and I really appreciate this robust discussion. Before I reflect on my thoughts, Mr. Gearbaugh, could you answer, so you've mentioned that the person who is teaching the ELA for these students is actually not certified as a reading instructor. What is the person who was previously teaching academic literacy teaching this year?
So the state of Michigan says that a true corrective reading and/or comprehensive course must be taught by a reading specialist with a BR certification, a reading certification BT, or a language arts certification BX endorsed teacher. This includes courses where the teacher uses a boxed scripted program. So that's part of the reason these courses were elective courses and not English credit courses, because none of our English teachers in the district have a BR, a BT, or a BX. They all actually have a BA certification, which allows them to teach English and can support reading and teach reading in a class, but not a class that is specifically designed for correcting reading.
But the individual who is previously teaching academic literacy, who does have that certification.
Does not have a BR, a BT, or a BX.
Does not. Okay. Okay. I hope that both the board and Mr. Gearba and Mr. McMahon and the community will give me a bit of grace as I'm asking all of these questions. This is out of my wheelhouse, but I do appreciate the many fellow board members, Mrs. Murray, Mrs. Freight, Mrs. Rosalyncher, who all have professional and content expertise in this area, and for my fellow board members who professionally work in other settings who care deeply and passionately about issues for our students. And I hope that those in the audience and the many community members we've heard from this week will see this careful, thoughtful, robust discussion and careful consideration as an indication that the board does care very deeply about these issues and about the students in this district. And although we don't all have this professional expertise, I appreciate the grace in trying to understand the complexity of this issue. I think at the outset, a board's responsibility is not to develop or set or prescribe the curriculum per se. We have great trust in our administrators and our staff to carry out the mission and the vision that is set by the board. And so, although I was not on the board at the time of the original discussions from a change from a 7-hour to a 6-hour day, I don't even know if I would have had the foresight to ask every single permutation of the consequences of this. And so I'm not holding any frustration in terms of not having this come up earlier, because I think that that's outside of the purview of the board and is an indication of the confidence that a board has to have in their administrators and their staff. I appreciate the due diligence of this conversation and the conversation that happened earlier with a community meeting in the transition from 7 hours or 7 periods a day to 6. And so normally, this level of granularity I don't think would come to the board. However, I think it's here now because it appears that we have some miscommunication or lack of communication or new understanding of the ramifications of this decision that is of deep concern to the families and staff members of our district. And so I appreciate all of you who came here tonight and last week. I wasn't here last week, but I did listen in. And I think then when something like this arises where this type of concern becomes evident and there's not a resolution that has happened in absence of board involvement, it is our responsibility to dig in, understand the discussion based on the conversation we've had, and to I'm not going to sit by Ryan's side and create the master schedule because that's not my skill set or my role. But I see my role as a board member to facilitate and encourage our administrators and our staff to work towards a resolution here. Of course, we all care deeply about our students. Of course, education, and particularly skills related to learning and reading, are at the forefront of whatever one decides to do professionally or personally in their life. And I think it's clear that perhaps either the plan that is put forth has not been communicated to staff and families in a way that is adequate to understand how the new structure will create the supports that were existing previously. So perhaps there needs to be more discussion if in fact the idea is that administration is confident that this proposal or this plan is sufficient. And if not, to work creatively to do just what we've talked about, to incorporate parent and staff feedback, to utilize the rich resources that we have, and to truly hear each other. I know it's not as simple as just adding an elective course, because that has major implications on, as Mr. McMahon said, class sizes and so forth. But it seems that we are at a bit of an impasse here in either communication with articulating the rationale and assurances that the supports that are needed will be met, or in creating a structure and an environment that will provide the needed resources if what is put in place is in fact inadequate. And again, I frankly could sit here all night and ask a lot of questions, and my background is not one that is going to solve this question. I again turn to our community, our staff, and our administrators who I trust wholeheartedly. But I want to amplify the concerns that we've heard from the community here, and ask our administrators to think carefully about how to meet these real concerns that have been raised. And if we are going to meet them with a proposal that has already been developed, to then articulate that and share that with our community, because it's clear that we have a lot of existing concerns within our community. Thank you.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Laika.
When I look at the chart that was included in the report, can you tell me, Mr. Gearbar, Mr. McMahon, which of the classes that are listed in the chart are elective? Or are all of these required either by the state or our own graduation requirements? Which I want the community to know, our graduation requirements are much more stringent than the state's. So just so everyone understands why we're making a distinction between the two.
You're talking about the chart of the classes that the English teachers,
Yeah, I don't know what page it is because I'm reading it on my phone. Yeah.
Mr. McMahon, you and I can do our best to work through those. Do you?
In essence, you need 4 English classes to graduate, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything by the state standard that says that what each English class has to entail?
Yeah, the state standards. I mean,
I can tell you off the top of my head, video film is an elective class, yearbook is an elective class. The other AP classes, the ELA 9, 10, 11, 12, those are all meeting state requirements. Some of those classes are not ELA 9, 10, and 11. They're
The vast majority of those
mythology,
are
American
required.
literature. Those are the course names for those ELA 9, 10, and 11 classes. Obviously, one teacher also teaches some Spanish, and we'll be teaching AP seminar. So I can provide you that information. We can look through this list in detail and come back with the courses that are electives and the courses that are earning the credits that are needed.
And are we still able, under our contract with our teachers, to offer to purchase their prep times?
Yes.
So if a teacher was willing to sell a prep time, that would create a space in the schedule that could be utilized for an elective course.
Correct.
Figured it out. Only 4 at one time, right, Andrew? So I was like, did I break it already? I guess we've spent, as a board, I'm sorry, Mr. Sissel? Okay. We spent a great deal of time, effort, energy, admin, community, our teachers, our staff, everything, developing our strategic plan. We've made the cognitive effort to have it in front of us. That's what all of us have in front of us on here. And when I go through our mission, our vision, our belief statements, our strategic areas, it just comes again and again and again, the focus on our student learning and preparedness, the individual and the whole, giving them to their greatest potential, supporting them. I know it is not as easy as throwing up an elective, but there's a reason we have those electives, and there's a reason we have college-bound electives, and there's a reason we have the support electives. And it feels like there is a vast, dire need for those. If our teachers aren't telling us that, then our community is telling us that, and I would argue we need to hear that. It's invaluable. I know from my own 2 children and from the electives I took myself, those are what keep you in school. Those are what keep you going. Those are what get you educated. Those elective courses are invaluable, if not for just the educational content, but for the takeaway that you learn outside of the classroom. And it feels like that supports everything we are direly trying to do. And I would like to continue to do that as best as possible. And I think we need to reevaluate, relook, and see what we can do about that, because it seems like we're limiting things, and that is not something that any of us, administration, staff, community, or families want for our kids. And going from 6 to 7, we're already kind of doing that, and so I would challenge us to reevaluate how much we're taking away.
Any others?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
I just want to highlight that in this proposed plan, to your point, Ms. Wright, there would be an opportunity for those students who previously participated in that double-blocked ELA to have an additional elective, which serves that end, right, of having more access to a wider variety of courses, whereas those students would have previously been, they would have had multiple elective credits sucked up in having that support. So I think that's important to bring forward again, that, you know, and I agree with Ms. Gutierrez. I think that largely what we may be facing here is a PR issue, right? Because it seems to me that the perception in the community is that this is one only of loss. This is only a loss situation. And I don't know that I'm wholly convinced that that's true. I don't think that it is. I can see, you know, having looked at this report now, there are benefits to be gained in shifting from a 7 to a 6-hour day, adding instructional time, increasing access to other elective courses for our at-risk students. And I don't need to reiterate it all. I mean, it's all in there. But we do have to address the deficit mindset. And I think people are feeling a little on their heels, perhaps, about how this has been presented. And I agree with Ms. Gutierrez, too. This is, I'm working through the CBA courses right now and learning about, you know, what is and is not in the purview of the board. And instructional programming is not necessarily in the purview of the board. So we do have to have our faith in our administrators and our staff. But I do question the stakeholder involvement, the stakeholder faith in this move. I question the communication to families. And I would like to see that focused upon going forward and making sure that whatever needs to happen to bring everybody kind of on board and rowing together again, I think that is what ultimately will serve our students. And, you know, change is never easy. I have been on the receiving end of instructional changes and being told I'm, you know, teaching this course instead of that course. You're going to move to this building instead of that building. And, you know, as an educator who spends 180 days a year plus multiple weeks in the summer honing my craft and figuring out how I'm going to best do this for my students, taking those changes in stride can be really, really difficult and very scary. And so I think that that's just something that I want to lift up and amplify, as you aptly stated, that we do have honored, experienced professionals who have come to us and have shared that they are frustrated, fearful, unclear of the vision and how this moves forward effectively for our students. And so I just would encourage that dialogue to continue and a focus on increased communication with all. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. So, Mr. Gearba, this is the plan moving forward for 23-24 that you presented?
Yes, and as far as sharing information, I mentioned earlier that Mr. Brousseau sent me an email on June 2nd, and on June 9th, I responded to his email, and I said, "You are correct that academic literacy is not a course offering for the 23-24 school year. Sections of young adult literature, American literature, and humanities have been created specifically for students identified for reading support and instruction. These sections will have the ability to focus on the reading needs of the students as the curriculum is somewhat flexible and daily lessons are determined by the instructor. Students were identified for these sections using data and teacher input. Throughout the 23-24 school year, we will also be providing additional support to students and teachers through the use of support staff and additional training. Aaron, the ELA department, and the TCs will work together to fine-tune these additional supports and revisions to be fully implemented." That was communicated on June 9th. The plan presented to me included the statement, "We would request that students are enrolled, we would request that we enroll identified students in reading improvement-focused sections of ELA courses." That's what we're doing. So I'm a little confused that that was the plan that was presented to us by a staff person, and that's what we're doing, and yet there's confusion.
You're misusing my words.
I'm reading a sentence.
Reading focus because Aaron Shin said that he didn't want to call them reading instruction classes.
Okay.
And what came back were accommodated classes to get a kid through a class as best as possible, not to teach them reading. That's a
Push them
huge
through.
difference.
You mean push them through.
With all due respect,
Okay,
everyone.
okay, okay. Clearly there has,
Use my name again and say that I want
Okay.
that.
so I understand, I mean, I appreciate all the comments from the community and the board. I do think Ms. Gutierrez stated it well. And when I'm looking at this plan, there's a 2023-24 planning guide for implementation that has 6 bullet points. And I think that's something that this board needs to focus on as we move forward, as we have these conversations. And the board will follow up in regards to this planning guide. I think that our teachers have great intentions, our administrators have great intentions, the board has great intentions. I think we need to come together in regards to this and move forward. Obviously, there's miscommunication in regards to this that needs to be resolved. Many people came up and talked about how they're proud of this district last time and continue to be. I think this is something that we can come together and work towards. It's evident to me that the plan doesn't eliminate the supports. It puts the supports in it provides them in different ways. And we need to communicate that and execute this plan that's been put forward. And we're going to need to depend on our staff and our administrators and the board's responsibility in holding the administration accountable for this. Obviously, like we stated, it's not the board's responsibility to figure out a master schedule, but we do need to have reading support at the high school level, and how that's implemented. It has been implemented in a way in the past. There's a proposal here to implement it in a way going forward. There's plenty of changes that Milan schools have made across the years that have been successful or not been successful. I don't know how this cannot be evaluated until it's tried. And there are points that are put forward by others that, this plan, there's pros and cons to every plan. So that's my view on it. I know we're not scheduled to take any action on it as a board, because again, it's not the purview of the board to tell the school how to run a master schedule. So,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
I guess it's a statement of what I would like to see. I would like to see if it's possible at this point to add an elective class for the reading apprenticeship. That way, while we are training the teachers to implement this plan, the students and the staff have the ability to prepare for this new plan. So I guess my question is it possible at this point? Not is it going to be a lot of work? Not is it going to be difficult? Is it possible at this point to add this as an elective, to give opportunity, one, for this communication to go out to parents to prepare for the next year, to resolve the perception issues, and to allow for an opportunity to train the teachers, so we're not building the plane and flying it at the same time.
Mr. Sislo? Go ahead.
I guess we should, let him
Answer
answer the
that.
question. And
I would say that anything is possible. We can definitely look at implementing a class. What we would probably do is implement that class, and then we would go to the students that are in those 3 sections of the ELA classes and ask them if there's a different elective that they would like to give up to double book English. And we can talk to the families and see, we can work through that process.
It just seems to me that at this point that's a compromise. I mean, we've heard from the community about their concerns about this. And if we can, it seems to me to be a compromise to at least get us through this year so that we can address these concerns and have more community buy-in as we move forward. Because I'm not saying that we don't necessarily move forward with this plan in the future. I have concerns about it, but I'm not saying we don't move forward with it. But I think that if we allow ourselves some time to, communicate with the stakeholders, allow the stakeholders to, get more information, in my mind, it's kind of a win for this year. Not a compromise. No one's always happy, right? Like when you compromise, people are upset on both sides. As a lawyer, that's always a sign of a good settlement when no one's happy, right? But I just can't help but wonder, given the community outpouring, if this isn't a chance for us as a district to offer this compromise, figure this out, so that we can move forward as a community in addressing this issue.
Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Heika, for that suggestion, because I think I don't want my comment of the board's role is to encourage our administrators and staff to look at this creatively as in any way suggesting that it's not something that we want to give care and thought to. It is not an endorsement that I think we should continue to just proceed as planned. I think it was an indication that the stakeholders in this conversation need to revisit the issues and brainstorm and postulate with creativity about what's possible to solve these types of concerns that have been raised. I appreciate Mrs. Heika's suggestion of looking at what it would take to offer this as an elective for this year. Thinking about what would it take to be a bit prescriptive for those courses that can be run differently, those sections, but to be a bit prescriptive in terms of what should be included in there from a reading instruction point of view. These are the types of things, as a board, I think we need to go back to our administrators and our teachers and ask to be creative in finding the solutions collectively and creatively. How can we utilize the resources that we do have? I don't know you, Mrs. Galushan, but I've heard nothing but wonderful things before my time on the board and since. I've heard that from teachers and parents. I would personally like to know, how is Mrs. Galushan being utilized this year to support these? And those are the types of things that I think collectively we can revisit this decision, not just say, let's let it go and figure, see how it goes. Yes, we do at some point need to make a change and see how it goes. But at the same time, when there are concerns that are existing with the proposed revision, I'm asking for our district to be responsive and creative in thinking about some compromises along the way that will soften that transition and allow us something that if the transition doesn't work, we have a structure to fall back on for those students who clearly are desperately needing these types of resources.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Mr. Farrell.
I think what I wrestle with is the fact that there just was no communication to parents. Nothing was communicated. We heard tonight that there were concerns addressed in June, but we as the board don't hear about those concerns until August. And it just seems to me like we're trying to run the clock out. And I'm trying to be as polite and as professional as possible, but we shouldn't be doing what works best for the school or works best for the district. We need to do what's best for our students. And the concern that I have is perhaps what we've put together, perhaps what the administration team has put together is not enough. And there should be a way to add an elective. We just have to be creative. And it may cost us some money to do that. So I want to also acknowledge I'm not an administrator. I'm not an educator. I'm not an administrator in the education field. I know that's a lot of work. I know that there is going to be, if we make a change, if we add an elective, there are going to be changes in class sizes and things of that nature. But we have that now. There's an AP statistics class that's going to have a number of students in it because we are now offering that once rather than twice. And I'm very frustrated. I'm frustrated because these concerns were addressed in June, yet for whatever reason, we didn't learn about these concerns until August. And here we are a couple weeks before the school year starts, and it just comes across to me like we are trying to run the clock out. And this is just the way it's going to be. And I have tremendous respect for Mr. Gearbaugh, Mr. McMahon, and everybody that works for this district. I think people know that. But I don't want the community to believe that I'm okay with this. Because we could have done a lot better in terms of our communication with the community. There could have been better or more communication with the board. I acknowledge that it isn't my responsibility to get involved with the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day. I acknowledge that. But now that it's in front of us, we need to address it. And it needs to be addressed to the satisfaction of our stakeholders. And to be honest with you, I don't care if it takes some time to figure this out. because had I been told in June, or had I been told that we were going to remove reading and also integrated math as a result of moving from 7 hours to 6 hours, I believe that I would have raised a concern at that time. And so I apologize for my tone, but I want it to be known that this wasn't presented, this wasn't communicated to parents. And we can't possibly be surprised that parents and educators are upset because none of this was communicated. And I don't even know if we've communicated what the plan is for the fall. Have we sent anything out like, hey, this is our plan, you've been identified as needing this additional reading, and this is what we're going to be doing? I don't know if any of that's transpired. And so I'm frustrated. Thank you.
Mr. Sislo?
Can I make a statement, please?
Yeah, Mr. Gearba.
At this point, with the comments made by the board, I'm going to ask that a directive is given, because at this point, for me to go and try and come up with a compromise and then come back to the board, and the board's still not satisfied, and I don't know where you stand, and if the community's not happy, so if the board wants to get involved, then just tell us what you want. Because at this point, we don't have time, I agree with you, Mr. Farrow, for me to try and go and come up with some compromise. We put the plan on the table that we felt was best. To try and come back with a compromise that's partway but doesn't satisfy the board or doesn't satisfy the community or doesn't satisfy the teachers, then we're gonna be behind the eight ball even worse. So if you want these classes added, then somebody make a motion, add the classes, and we'll make it happen.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Rosenbleacher.
I have a lot of trepidation and a lot of concern over some of this, and to say that it wasn't communicated, I think, is not true. In the report we received, there was a community meeting held. Whether or not, clarify, community meeting held regarding the transition from 7 to 6 classes. How many people were there and were part of it, I don't know. I'm concerned that there is some micromanaging starting to take place, and that is concerning. I respect our teachers. I respect the desire to support our most vulnerable learners, but I'm a little concerned. If we weren't a part of those conversations, then it was a choice that perhaps as board members we made to not go and be at some of those community meetings. I suspect this took place back in February when the scheduling takes place. I don't know if everyone's aware, that's when students select their courses for the upcoming year, because that's when they're building the master schedule. That's when they begin to see what courses can be offered, what courses do we have to eliminate. It's not just, we're gonna eliminate an AP Stats class, it's we can combine them because our numbers warrant that growth in that area, which is quite an anomaly because in my personal experience, AP classes tend to run lower than any core class that's required by the state of Michigan to complete for the purpose of graduation. AP classes are not core courses. They are elective courses. They can be applied to a state mandated graduation requirement. So an AP English class as an example. But they are considered elective courses. And I know this because if you had a child who wanted to participate, who is a homeschool child but wanted to participate in a public school course, they can only participate in elective courses. They couldn't come and take English 9, they couldn't come and take English 10, but they could take AP Literature. It's considered an elective course. I say this because this is not easy. It's very, very complicated and very complex. There isn't a just if, then. It's bigger than that. And I hear everyone's concerns, everyone at this board table. I also have had concerns, but I have to have some level of faith in our administrative team to do what's right for our learners. Thank you.
I think that, sorry, Mr. Sislo. I think that the frustration is that when we approved our course offerings this spring, we relied on the course catalog for the high school and the middle school. When it came to the elementary school, though, we were very clear that we were going to be cutting the library as a special. And because that was clear, I've had many conversations with elective teachers who reached out to me, with Mr. Girabaugh. It allowed us to look at, what does the elementary school schedule allow for? Why did we have that extra special at the elementary school? Oh, and then that led to questions of, well, we had the extra special because we had extra sections in first and fourth grade. And we had those extra sections because those classes were large, and we needed those extra sections to keep the class sizes down. And because we had that conversation, I have been talking since May about how we maybe need to hire another second and fifth grade teacher, because those first graders and fourth graders are now second graders and fifth graders. All of that conversation was allowed to happen organically because we got that course listing in the spring and were notified that the elective library class was going to be eliminated. Without that, I don't know that all those conversations would have happened. And so I think that, from my perspective, that's the frustration I have, is that I relied upon that listing. I relied upon the high school and the middle school course catalog. Never would I ever have imagined that integrated math and reading instruction was going to be cut from the high school. And now it's August, and now I know. And I only know because community members were brave enough to come to the board. And while I agree, as a general statement, that the board should not get into the business of micromanaging, I think that there are times when the board has to step in and say, our stakeholders were not involved in this decision. And that's not just our teachers, it's our parents. Because I think we heard from a few parents that they were unaware that this was going to happen. And so I think this is one of those times where, as a board, we need to step in and say, I trust the work that you did. I trust, that you have the kids' best interests at heart, but there's a disconnect between this group of people and our stakeholders. And we as a board are instructing you, administration, to listen to our stakeholders. And that's what I think has to happen at this point.
Mr. Zislo?
Yes, Ms. Frey.
I think I'm going to pull a page from Mrs. Gutierrez's book where you sit back and reflect on the conversation. I appreciate you saying, Mr. Zislo, that we have to try it to evaluate it. We tried our integrated math and English classes and were successful, so much so that even though we went from an ACT test to an SAT test, we kept those classes. And they were always ran as an elective. So that wasn't even, it was just always there as an elective. So to have it removed is challenging to me. For as far as I can remember, back subbing with Mrs. Glushin, the double block was also always an elective. So, and to Mrs. Rosenleacher's credit, when I look at the presentation and everything that was presented to us, I do not recall, and I could be wrong, full disclosure, the discussion of very specific classes being eliminated. There being a change in hours, there being a change in electives, those types of things. I do think there's a significant importance, and like you're saying, it happens back in February, of knowing what's going to have to be leveraged and what's going to have to be sacrificed, if you will. When my daughter was a freshman, she took honors biology, and then she wanted to take AP, and she was told to sign up, but you're not sure if they're going to run it because it might be an every other year thing. So it was known right away, might not get it. I don't know that that was an opportunity that was given to these individuals and to our kids. And it's always been known, like you said, APs are electives. It's very much an elective. My kid was crazy and did 5. And you're not always granted those. You know, even when we had that meeting and Kate said, I wanted 5, you said, okay, Kate, we'll sign you up, but we don't know if that's going to happen. There's absolutely no guarantee. And we have found a way as a district to run those AP classes, keeping our stakeholders, and I keep in mind every time stakeholders is said, no offense to anybody, but the kids, our students, that we found a way to run our AP classes with 8 kids in them. We found a way to run our AP classes with less than 15 because we felt that those children, those students would benefit. It would seem to me that we have a group of students and supportive staff and supportive administration for that matter, because they recognize the need for this, to find a way to make that happen. And without going necessarily in depthly into the weeds, but these 2 particular programs, which is why I keep going back to my responsibilities as a board member, the reading and our scores are fundamental. And preparing them to be successful is fundamental. And they choose those. They don't have a choice on what they have to have for graduation, but they choose those electives accordingly to help them succeed. We give them those options to help them succeed. And in this particular case, the integrated math and that literacy program is something that we've tried and we have found success. We have evaluated it to be successful, regardless of certification, regardless of double blocking, regardless. We have statistics and we have even gone so far as to boast about them, so we know that that's a proven given thing. And to take that in very, very particular in a finite lens, and maybe that is getting into the weeds, away seems detrimental. I would support trying and challenging us, as Mr. Gearbow said we need to do, to try to reincorporate those to make sure that we are ensuring the successes of our students.
Others?
So what happens next?
We need to make a decision if if the board's going to have a resolution in regards to this. I mean, that's.
Mr. Sislo,
Yeah, Mr. Gearbow.
I would suggest if you're going to proceed with that you take a recess to review your board policies, to know exactly what it does take to add an action item to an agenda in the middle of the meeting. Because I believe, but I'm not going to be quoted on this, that you have to actually take a vote first to add the action item
I agree.
and then make the action item. And I'm not sure what % of the board is required to add an action item. So just so that you don't violate your own board policies, I recommend that you maybe take a recess and review those board policies to make sure that we're all clear on exactly what has to happen for someone to make a resolution at the table.
In lieu of that, Mr. Sislo, I don't know how you move to make a recess. I move to recess.
Is there support to go into recess?
Support by Farrell.
So it's been moved and supported to go into recess. Ms. Heike?
Oh, boy. That's how I'm going to do it. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Farrow?
Yes.
Heike, yes. Sislo?
Yes.
Rosenleacher?
Yes.
Freight?
Yes?
Murray?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
So we'll go into recess at 10:32. All right, call the meeting back to order at 11 o'clock. All right, so I found the policy. It's PO 166. The board shall transact business according to the agenda prepared by the superintendent and submitted to all board members in advance of the meeting. The order of business may be altered and items added at any meeting by a majority vote of the members present. So that's the policy that we will be following. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Heike.
I move to amend the agenda to include section 5B, on the agenda to provide the administration direction related to offering academic literacy as an elective at the high school, and to include Section 5C on the agenda to provide the administration direction related to offering integrated math as an elective at the high school.
I have a motion. Is there support?
Support by Farrell.
Can I have your motion?
Yes. It's really chicken scratch.
Okay, I have a motion to amend the agenda to include Section 5B on the agenda to provide the administration direction related to offering academic literacy as an elective at the high school, and Section 5C in the agenda to provide the administration direction to offer integrated math as an elective at the high school. Any discussion? Hearing none. The agenda, I have a motion to amend the agenda to include Section 5B to provide administration direction related to offering academic literacy as an elective at the high school, and then 5C on an agenda item to provide the administration direction to offering integrated math as an elective at the high school. Ms. Heika?
Gutierrez,
Yes.
Pharaoh,
Yes.
Heika, yes. Sislo,
Yes.
Rosenleacher,
Yes.
Freight,
Yes?
Murray.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, so on the agenda now we'll move to the added Section 5B to provide administration direction related to offering academic literacy as an elective at the high school. Is there a motion in regards to this agenda item?
Mr. Sislo, I move that the board provide the, started writing it somewhere.
Okay.
Move to direct the administration to create 3 sections of academic literacy in the 2023-2024 academic year at the high school.
Support by Farrell.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to direct the administration to create 3 sections of academic literacy in 2022-23, in the 2023-24, I apologize. It's been moved and supported to direct the administration to create 3 sections of academic literacy in the 2023-2024 academic year at the high school.
Mr. Sislo?
Any discussion?
Where did the 3 specific number of sections come from? I'm curious as to that, and if we don't have students to fill those 3 sections.
That would allow the administration to create an academic literacy course at the 9th grade, the 10th grade, and the 11th grade level.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
My understanding of this would be that I'm merely stating this as a question, not as an indication of my feelings on the matter. That would be more elective courses in academic literacy than we had previously offered before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So my follow-up to that is that I would like to understand the rationale is not the word I want to use, but whether or not the resources may be best utilized with an addition of a course that was not previously offered before under a system that appeared to be working quite well.
That is a fair comment, and I am willing to amend my motion to include 2 sections of academic literacy, one for 9th grade and one for 10th grade.
Mr. Sislo, does Mrs. Hyken need support on amending?
Yes.
If
Is there
so,
support, is there support for the amendment,
I will-
okay.
I will support that.
Hold on. You had a motion by Heike, supported by Farrow.
Let's, okay,
You
Why don't
either
I
need to vote on
withdraw-
that,
we can.
or you need to amend it and then have Mr. Farrow approve the amendment, since he approved the original, just to.
Yeah, I approve the amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now the motion is to direct the administration to create two sections of academic literacy, 9 and 10, for the 2023-24 academic school year at the high school. That's the motion on the table.
Correct.
Other discussion?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
Well, I appreciate very much. I think that doing so is an important compromise that our stakeholders have indicated that is needed. It seems that there needs to be, irregardless of how this motion goes, there needs to be better communication with families about the way in which the 6-hour ELA for at-risk students, which will have an integrated reading component, will be administered. And particularly, I think, should this motion pass, I think information and communication needs to go to families about what they would be getting, what their students would be getting in the 6-hour ELA, not the 6-hour, the ELA that will be offered under a 6-hour block versus that plus this elective course.
Basically, I mean, because they have to double book now.
They would be essentially double blocked, and but it won't be double blocked as it was before, because it's a bit different.
But they'll lose an elective.
And they'll lose an elective. So while I think there may be support for the motion broadly, I think that it's not enough to add on the electives. I think it needs to come with very careful advisement and communication to the families about what they would be getting or not getting should they choose or not choose to take the elective.
So you're saying, I mean, because they would have to adjust their schedule, is what you're saying?
They would have to adjust their schedule, but also the proposal that Mr. Gearbaugh and Mr. McMahon put forth originally was to have an ELA section dedicated to students needing additional supports, and presumably they would be getting additional supports in their ELA course. This motion would mean that they would be getting supports there, as well as in an elective academic literacy course, which may frankly be tremendously beneficial. But I'd like those families to understand.
I guess, but now are we saying that, I don't know that that same level of support would be in that?
That's, I think, the question then. So,
I mean,
and
I can answer that. In order to make this work in the master schedule, more than likely, those classes that we had proposed will go back to being regular English classes. And we will just allow the students to be double booked. With only 5 teachers in the English department, there's no way that we can offer all of these different courses and make that all work. It's just not going to happen. So what we will do is we will return to the plan that we previously had, and do our best to make that happen with the staff that we have. But I will tell you, more than likely, we are going to have to spend some funds to make this work, and I'm assuming by being given the directive that those funds are being made available.
So I appreciate that clarification very much, because I think it's important for us to note that, again, this does not reflect my position on the motion, but it's important for us to reflect then that this is not a step towards understanding whether or not the new model might work, because there will not be an opportunity for that new model to be enacted. And that's, I think, an important thing for us just to be cognizant of, in terms of what Mr. Gearbaugh indicated as some of the issues for long-term planning within the district. And perhaps it's kicking that question down the field just a little bit.
I think that's a fair comment, but I think it also gives us an opportunity to flesh out the new plan and the future planning and allow us an opportunity to communicate with the stakeholders on what that's really going to look like moving forward and why.
I agree. Kicking it down the road is not a bad thing necessarily. It sometimes gives you a little bit more of a running start.
I guess my concern is at what level, how many students do we need to have in those sections in order for them to run?
Well, what do we do for AP students?
I believe it's always been, I'm sorry, Mr. Sissel, 15, correct, Ann, or Brian? I think you've always said it, you need to be fiscally responsible of at least 15 students.
Yeah. I mean, if you start looking at the revenue generated by a number of students versus the cost of running a class, I think, yeah, you're probably in the 12 to 15 students to make it feasible to run a class.
But we've run AP classes with 5 before, right?
Once or twice we have done that, and that was because as we approached the year, we would have either done that or gone to a teacher and said, are you willing to be part-time?
Okay.
Is there any expectation in the motion in who teaches the sections?
No.
Any other questions or concerns?
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
It's very late and I'm starting to struggle to assemble clear thought. But under the proposal by administration, we would have had 3 sections with, or, 3 grade levels with literacy support, right? That is the plan on the table. And so the motion that we are entertaining right now changes that to 2 sections, which and I'm sorry, Michelle, was that 9 and 10? Like going back to before?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say, though, assuming it fits within the schedule, and assuming you have a requisite number of students, there's nothing that would prevent the administration from creating 2 ninth grade classes for academic literacy, or 2 or 3, whatever there was a requisite number of students for, and whatever we could accommodate within the schedule. This motion would just require them to create 1 ninth grade and 1 10th grade.
I just want to make sure that I understand what you mean when you say accommodate in the schedule. Because doing this is going to require adding either hours, either purchasing conference times from teachers or hiring an additional staff person. I don't know that this is going to work within the master schedule. So I just want to be clear about that so that doesn't come up later.
Nope, that's completely
Right.
fair.
And so that kind of helps me kind of clarify some of my concerns about this motion. And I don't want to say that I no longer have concerns about moving the new plan forward, but I now have a new concern that if this motion were to be approved, we thereby create an additional set of complications for our administrative team less than 2 weeks before the start of the school year. I guess I'm just concerned about muddying the waters even more than they already are, especially given consideration to the fact that the staff member currently teaching the literacy course may or may not continue with the district. I guess just want to raise that concern about adding more irons in the fire, more things to try to consider and balance. I continue to desire more clarification in terms of the training of staff. You know, if we were to move forward with the administration's proposal, I would like to see and hear more about how staff would be supported in doing that. I don't think that PD over the course of the year is necessarily sufficient. I need to keep thinking. Thank you. That's it for now.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Others?
Is there any expectation of the number of students in a section? I never heard an answer to that question. I just want to make sure I know the parameters as we move forward.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
Given that this would, this motion would essentially return us to where we were before, what was the policy before with this course? Was there a requirement for a number of students?
They usually ran, Jen, between 20 and 25. And to be clear, while it was an elective course, we didn't, students were told they would be in it. So I do want to be clear, this wasn't a class that students picked. We did all the research, we did all the data, we determined the students that should be in the courses, and we double booked them into those two classes as part of the scheduling process. So, and then the communication, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, the communication then came from Mrs. Glushin to the students a little bit as to why they were in there and what the purpose of that class was and all of that. In the past, that never happened pre-game. It was just something that was done and then explained to the families later.
So you're saying that if we'd go to the 25 students right now and ask them if they want to take this as an elective in addition to their ELA classes?
Well, I don't know. Do we ask them, or would we go back to all of our old methodologies and just put them in?
I
And
think
tell
you-
them they have to subtract and just take one of their other classes away? This is the clarity that I need in order to be able to implement this the way you want it implemented.
And this is all fair. I suggest that you manage it the same way you managed it before. I think the additional communication, though, is that these students will now be taking this instead of whatever elective was already on their schedule. And if students wish to opt out, they're able to do that and go back to the schedule they had before.
Sorry to ask clarifying questions, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I understand. The student can opt out, or the parent of the student has to opt out?
The parent of the student has to opt out.
All right. I just,
Other questions or concerns? All right, I have a motion to direct the administrative to create two sections of academic literacy, 9 and 10, for the 2023-2024 academic year at the high school. Ms. Heika?
Yes.
Heika, yes. Sislo?
No.
Rosenleacher?
No.
Freight?
Yes?
Murray?
No.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3.
All right, next up on the agenda is I need a motion to direct the administration to create a integrated math section for the 2023-24 academic school year at the high school.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes.
I move to direct the administration to create at least one section of integrated math at the high school for the 2023-2024 academic year.
Support by Farrow.
So moved and supported to direct administration to create one section of integrated math at the high school for the 2023-24 academic year. Discussion.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Rosenleach.
I want to clarify, that would be that integrated math in 11th grade? Is that when it was offered in the past?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. I guess the one concern I have is just, we have heard a lot from our community over the integrated reading, and I respect that. Nobody from our math department is here, and they were involved in the conversation and the changing, so that is a bit of a concern to me.
Others?
I would, Mr. Sislo,
Yes, Ms. Murray.
just concur with Ms. Rosenleacher about, from the proposal given to or the report given to the board, it did seem as though the math department was involved in and collaborated on the reimagining of the math program, and not having heard from any of them, I have hesitation about moving forward at this time.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
I share that same concern as Mrs. Rosenleacher and Mrs. Murray. Not only does it sound like, and the report suggests that the math department was highly collaborative in the new proposal that administration put forth, but we also have not heard, at least in a public forum, any feedback from families, from parents. And I would like to ask Mr. Gearboss specifically whether or not there has been any feedback from parents about it that we may not have heard.
I have not had any feedback regarding the integrated math class.
Okay.
My comment would be, I hear everything all of you are saying. I'm coming from the position of, I'm not sure that parents are aware that integrated math was a previous offering and the purpose of integrated math. I know I knew about it because of my position on the board when my student was a junior. And then, I was going to say something else. Oh, then my other position, the reason I'm making this motion is the integrated math class was a proven successful class. The test scores improved and sometimes drastically. And so that's where I'm coming from here, is that it's something that was proven to work, and I just don't see the reason yet why we would abandon a class that was proven to work at this time.
Do you have any insight, Mr. McMahon, on the math department's view on integrated math? Okay.
No, I mean, not personally, but I was informed that they were on the leadership team and they were willing to come together and figure out how to put that as part of the classes.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
And just to clarify, the current proposal for integrated math is similar to ELA, where instead of offering it only at 11th grade with the use of the extended time in classes, an increased focus on mathematical literacy, if you want to put it that way, would be incorporated into 3 grade levels, correct? 9, 10, and 11 for math
Let me look at the proposal.
versus, and then I guess I'm formulating a question as I speak. Ms. Heike, your motion is simply to add an integrated math course for grade 11, but would that allow the administration to continue to move forward with the changes in 9, 10, and 11?
That's a good question. The purpose of this motion is to create at least one section of integrated math so that if students choose to elect to take it, they can. There's nothing then that would stop the administration from, just as with the reading discussion, beginning to implement those supports in the other grades to prepare for whatever the future math plan. Does that make sense?
but then I'm wondering if there would be additional staffing concerns that would come from adding a course that's not currently planned for. I think Mr. Gearbaugh was saying that it would require a spend in some areas.
I'm not necessarily going to say it would require a spend, but it's going to shift a tremendous amount of teacher schedules to make this happen. And I can't talk to exactly what it's going to cause at this point, at this.
Mr. Sislo.
Yes, Ms. Rosenleisure.
Mr. Gearbaugh, just for clarification, the integrated math does in fact count as a math credit towards graduation? Is that, it does not? Okay, it's not, it's like the academic literacy. Okay, I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
What?
Is that correct? I was under the impression that it did allow for a math credit.
It's an elective class. If there's like a PC or something, I mean, there's ways you can make things happen. But
Okay.
If a
it's an
personal
elective
curriculum
course.
was created for a student, it could then be counted.
Okay.
Mr. Sislo,
Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
just so I make sure I am understanding the proposal in front of us, this would be to create a single section of integrated math to be offered to 11th grade students.
Correct.
And perhaps unlike the ELA integrated proposal that the administration had put forth, excuse me, the math course would continue to offer integrative elements. I think this is what Mrs. Murray was asking about, correct? So this would in fact be a bit more in line with a compromise towards a vision of what the administration's proposal would look like to bring some of those integrative, I like the mathematic literacy, into the math courses and for the students who would like to take the additional integrative math course. Am I understanding that correctly?
So the intent in the plan is that the material from the integrated math class would be worked into the freshman, sophomore, and junior normal math classes. So the normal progression of classes for those students. So instead of getting all of that in one class in 1 year, they would receive that support over 3 classes spread out with some intensity in the junior year.
So my understanding of this is that that can still happen even with the addition of this integrative math elective, and that is the intent.
I don't see why that couldn't still happen. We're just going to have to see how the master schedule plays out and what teachers get what courses and, how many different preps teachers have and what abilities we have to make that work.
Okay. So I appreciate this context because, I think at the first outset, I was a bit on the fence about the math, not hearing from our community. But in this conversation, I think it highlights how perhaps this addition of these electives, at least in the next year, is needed so that we, as a district, can think through really what the structure of the plan would look like with a move towards incorporating these concepts into the overarching ELA and math courses. Because it seems like there's a bit of, it's a bit amorphous still, just a little bit.
Other questions or concerns? All right, I've got a motion to direct the administrative to create a integrated math section for the 11th grade for the 2023-2024 academic school year at the high school. Ms. Heike.
Hold on, is
Oh,
it at least one section or
I'm-
one section?
At least one.
Okay.
Tell me where you want to.
No, I guess I do want to go back to, I guess with ELA, I mean, there's a defined, how are you going to identify this, how are the students going to be identified for this elective?
The students can self-select like they do now.
How many sections do we routinely offer of this?
Varies from year to year, but it started as a class for all juniors. Am I even on?
You're on.
Yeah.
And it's dwindled down to about 3/4 of them. So. Two or
So
three
far
sections
more than
now,
one
maybe?
section.
Pardon me?
Far more than one section.
That's traditionally how, yeah.
According to the numbers in the proposal, I think it was 90 to 100 students and what Brian presented to us. But again, it's an elective, and help me Ryan on this one, it's essentially set up to help them improve their scores on the SAT scores. So this is, again, my understanding was when my kids took it too, that it's almost more of a college prep type of class, because its intent is to help you get better scores. So if you opted out of it, then you're still going to need those Algebra 2, Honors Algebra 2, I'm trying to think of 11th grade math, right? So this would be an elective that you were choosing to do as a college prep kid to get a better score. And I think it's pretty much spelled out that way in the course catalog too, isn't it?
The course was never designed just for those that were college bound. It was designed for all students. The intent is to increase test scores for all students.
You were the principal at the time that those classes were put in, right?
No,
Oh, I thought you were.
no, they started before me.
Okay.
Yeah. Nope. Academic literacy I was, but not math.
Mr. Sislo?
Yes, Ms.
So
Rosenleacher.
just for clarification, I understand for the reading how, the process that's going to take place, because it was described to us quite well last week as well as in the proposal. So I understand how we're going to identify those students. How are we going to contact the juniors about this academic literacy? Since it's very
You're talking about integrated math.
integrated math.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like an email to the entire junior class to say, do you want to choose?
I will say, I don't think that juniors are looking at their email right now, so it would be an instant message to the families to say that if their student's interested, we're going to have to pay our counselor some extra days to get the schedule built. Hopefully, they'll be amenable to that. And we'll have to set up some type of phone number for them to call. And then they're going to have to let us know what class they don't want to take. Or it might be that we choose what class they're not going to take because it's the way the schedule works. They may not get a choice as to which other class they want to give up. And so the only way I see this working for this class is we put a message out to all of the families of the juniors that say, we're reinstituting this class, and if your child is interested in taking it, please call this phone number by this time on this day, and the counselors will speak to you about what other class you want to drop.
Okay, that was what, I just wanted to clarify that as well. Thank you, Ms. Rosenleacher. So I have a motion to direct the administration to create at least one section of integrated math for the 11th grade for the 2023-2024 academic year at the high school. Ms. Heike.
Heike, yes. Sislo?
No.
Rosenleacher?
No.
Freight?
Yes.
Murray?
No.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Pharaoh?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3.
All right, the meeting is adjourned at 11:35.